Modern.
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 We're prepping for a voyage.
Modern.
The force of an old-fashioned equals whiskey mass times bitters acceleration.
Why don't you make that a double?
Modern Bar Cart.
What's shaking, cocktail fans? Welcome to Modern Bar Cart Live. I'm your host, Modern Bar Cart CEO Eric Kozlik. This is one of our live stream episodes where we taste through a number of themed bottles to try and get a better understanding of one of the world's most fascinating spirits categories. To kick off the new year in style, we're going to crack open a few historic bottles of Jamaican style rum and compare them to a few more widely available Jamaican expressions on the market. This is my co-founder Ethan Hall's area of growing expertise, so he is the guide on this particular flavor tour. The bottles we taste in order are Appleton Estate 8 Reserve, Smith & Cross Traditional Jamaica Rum, Forsyth's WP Single Jamaican Rum 2005, which was barrel-aged for 10 years. And then finally, Forsyth's WP 502 Single Jamaican White Rum from 2015. I know those last two are a mouthful, and believe me, they're each delicious mouthfuls in their own way. So definitely stick around to hear about how those two offerings from Habitation Vellier are pretty different from the stuff you can find on most liquor store shelves. No need for a whole lot of preamble on this episode, so grab a Glencairn glass and join us for this delightful 4-bottle tasting of Jamaican rum. Gentlemen, it is 2021. Thank you for joining us for this. It's not inaugural. We've done a few of these live streams so far, but it's the inaugural 2021 Modern Bar Cart Live Edition. Ethan, why don't you walk folks through what we were about to do as I fix our Instagram situation?
So what we're going to be doing here is one of our many, because I know it's going to be many, dives into rum. So what we wanted to do is we got some special bottles out here that I've picked up over time. Some of these are my second or third go rounds with particular ones, but I've been bugging Kaz to give me an excuse to open this one that we'll be building up to. It's a special one. I really wanted to drink this bottle for a special occasion, but 2020 has killed all special occasions. So the special occasion is my friend's condo and a live stream from it.
Rusty, do it. We see you want to do a soundboard thing. Go ahead, do it.
I just want
Get
to
it out of
test
your
it
system.
All right.
Thank you for the rim shot, Rusty. So what we've done is we've assembled a tasting of Jamaican rums here, and one of the things that I'm actually pretty excited about with this live stream is that I'm not leading it. We've got Ethan Hall taking the lead on this one. Why don't you just give us a little overview on some of the work you've been doing? We call it work. What's some air quotes there? Some of the work you've been doing in the rum space over the past 6 months to a year, and why you decided, besides just wanting to open this beautiful bottle, to do this particular lineup here today.
Sure. So as some of the more unfortunate followers of the Modern Bar Cart family of media outlets, the podcast, as well as just groups of our friends know, I went down a little bit of a rum rabbit hole this pandemic. One of the reasons was originally, and this was on a podcast you and I did, Kaz, I said that Smith & Cross Jamaican rum was my favorite liquid. And that was kind of the beginning of my rum rabbit hole, and that was about 2017 when I said that. Really, the idea is I just got into it after one of your podcasts started talking about Dunder Pits and Jamaican rum and all these weird fermentation things they were doing. And I finally had the wherewithal and the free time, and I live in a city where you don't have to drive, and I was told by the government, hey, don't drive anywhere. So I drank above the legal limit every day for the last 8 months. What ended up happening is I started wanting to legitimize this pursuit. So books started arriving at our house. It was also a good time to understand the history of colonialism and really understand just how much Europeans fucked the colonized people and started the slave trade. That was another dimension of it that became incredibly relevant, of course, throughout this past year, that got me even more interested in understanding, all right, how did these weird esoteric spirits come to be, and what is the cultural history, for better or for worse, of these, and how are these distillers starting to reclaim some of their own power in this, and ultimately have really vibrant rum industries. So I got very excited about Jamaica. It's a long-winded way of saying all the rums we're tasting today are Jamaican rums. I'm going to explain the logic of this tasting, but we have an Appleton Special Reserve 8-year, very accessible, very easy to find, very, I won't get into the tasting notes, Smith & Cross, which is a Navy strength, British imported blended, but blended from Jamaican rums, very funky. This is like kind of the bartender's best friend for funky cocktails. It's also very easy to find. Again, accessible.
It's used in a lot
point.
of floats on cocktails.
Yeah, it's really high alcohol, which is also great. But
For floating.
yeah, alcohol floats, as the Navy knows. Rusty,
Which Navy declared it Navy strength?
the British Navy. Russell, Navy strength. Explain.
So you need higher proof rum in case it spills on your gunpowder. And they wanted to prove it, so you need a certain burn point anyway, just to prove to your sailors that it's actually strong and not watered down grog.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, there's obviously, you're at sea. So, imagine, things going wrong, right? So, maybe you lose a cask overboard, and maybe you're the person in charge of doing the rum ration, and you're trying to sneak a little water in there. You try to sneak a little something that's not rum in there. Well, they're going to make you prove it. So, rum was taken very seriously, certainly by the British Navy. If folks want to go back and listen to my interview with Brian Davis of Lost Spirits Distilling, he has some really fun stories in that episode about Admiral Nelson getting killed in battle, and then his body was stuffed into a cask of rum to preserve it on its way back to England, yada, yada. So a lot of fun stories about the British Navy. There are many more that we still have yet to tell, but I'm guessing that Jamaica was a British colony, right? 'Cause generally, like if I'm trying to do the really high overview of rums, usually I'm thinking like, is it British or is it French?
Or is it Spanish?
And there's a little Spanish in there too. But so Jamaica, British-ish?
Yep. So British rums this is all based around why I was talking about colonial exploitation. The Europeans were in love with sugar. We'll have to do another episode where we just get into the British versus French thing, because sugar beets, Napoleon, colonial possessions, wars, all great stuff. These are molasses-based rums by and large. I'm going to call out one exception, which is pretty cool. And then, so basically the Brits turned Jamaica into a sugar factory in the 16 and 1700s, and that sparked their love affair with rum. That and the fact that they hated the Spanish and the French, who made brandy and Madeira, which were the other potable things you could bring on a ship to keep your sailors drunk.
Mm-hmm. And your body's preserved.
Yes, and your body's preserved.
Correct.
So that's, in essence, think British rums start at molasses. Jamaican rums, the proof is in the fermentation. They have you did that one that was a really early podcast episode about dunder pits, muck pits. Mm-hmm. What I'm just going to kind of get into here is Jamaican rums typically they're not all wild fermented, but they do put a heavy emphasis on weird fermentations and using something called dunder, which is the leftovers inside of the pot stills. It makes the fermentation tank where think of it like a sourdough starter, but way, way nastier.
Yep.
To keep that at an even lower, more acidic pH, which allows certain kinds of bacteria to form. They cast off really weird esters, which are these chemical compounds, in lieu of just making alcohol. So it is an inefficient process if your goal is to produce booze with the least number of calories. It is also a delightful thing, and the reason I like rum, because it ranges everywhere from caramel and apricot and bananas, kind of like a bourbon or a rye, all the way up to nail polish. Mm-hmm. It's weird, it's wild. So yeah, I'm not gonna. So I brought a bunch of notes. I photocopied some stuff as though I was in our college library yesterday out of some of the books I was reading. So during that period of time, we counted it. You know how everyone's doing their book recaps for 2020. Mine is like 3 non-rum books and about 8 rum books.
It's a good split, especially for this tasting.
Yeah, so
get rid of all those papers.
Dramatic notes, except for the worthy part ones.
Okay, and you gave me a little rundown here too, which is useful. Printed in old man style font, so in case I need to see it from across the room, I can do that.
Big text.
So, I think what we want to do is start tasting here. Rusty, you got anything for us before we jump in? I mean, do you like where's your stance on rum? What's your stance on Jamaican rum in particular? You like it?
So I've had a come and go history with rum. Like, I think I started out liking it. Went through a period where I think we all kind of went through trash rum. Admiral Nelson.
Rally the Fleet.
Yeah, Rally the Fleet. And then recently I've come back to it as like the rum and coke, the classic cocktail like that you just buy at the beach, because I've been doing a lot of tropical trips and I've really come to appreciate it again. It's just a relaxing, fun drink. And you can just pour yourself one and not feel like you have to really explore it. You can just enjoy it.
Yeah, little lime, call it Cuba Libre if you want to get fancy. And for anybody out there listening who wants to get real fancy, we have a lovely cola syrup, courtesy of Pratt Standard, on our e-commerce store over at modernbarcart.com. So we've actually done a lot of fun stuff with that cola syrup recently, including a little Fernet experiment that we did sort of in the back rooms of our operation. But the cola syrup's great. So if you want a Cuba Libre, head on over to our website, grab one of those, a little bit of bubbles, a little bit of rum, and some lime, and you're in shape. So Ethan, that being said, take us through the first spirit we're going to be tasting here in this Modern Bar Cart Live themed tasting on Jamaican rums.
Beautiful. Will do. All right, so we're starting with an Appleton rum. There are a lot of Appleton Estate rums you can get there, very easy to find. Their signature blend, the standard, it's a very squat. Hold up the bottle, guys. They all riff on this kind of shape. It's a little bulbous kind of situation. This one is their 8-year, also still very accessible in terms of the price and availability. You can find it just about everywhere. This is, so Appleton Distillery, Jamaica is an island of distilleries in my mind. I know there's other things happening there. In my mind, it's all divided up by distillers. Appleton and Ray, like Ray and Nephew, same company. They employed actually the first woman master blender of any distillery of like large macro note, Joy Spence, and she's been doing really great work at getting these products dialed in and allowing bartenders to kind of depend on them. So really, if you're just looking at the standard Appleton, the brown rum, that will make you an excellent Jungle Bird. It'll make you a lot of great cocktails, and it comes in at a super wallet-friendly price. We're not all about the money, but I am.
That's like what, for $7.50, like $25 a bottle?
Even less. I think like on the trip to Florida in the before time, I got it for like $21 at Publix. So you can see how I buy my liquor sometimes at the grocery store. So this is interesting that rum breaks down along a few lines. One is how it was distilled. This is actually a blend of column and pot stills. And one thing that Joy points out, and there's a lot of her fingerprints on these books, is that the pots are 100% copper. They're not copper lined, which a lot of people do. So let's go do a little.
Yeah, well, I mean, do the nose, but like one thing I want to point out right off the bat is that we're starting with the darkest spirit in our lineup here.
Yep, and
it's darkest
based on the agreed upon rules that they set on themselves, because rum is ungovernable and ungoverned. They do not put additives in this. There's not additional sugar being thrown in here, so this is, as far as I know, this is the rum.
Now, so it's the 8-year, and the label, it says, in fact, reserve. So this has oak age on it.
Yep. And
what you're telling me is that I can expect that all of this color is coming from that oak.
That's my understanding. Someone in the Well Actually group might chime in.
Sure.
This one I know less about. It's funny because it's the one with the most literature on it of the rums we've got here.
Fair. I mean, that's just the way. But so second follow-up question on that. Does the 8 mean 8 years average, or 8 years at oldest, or everything in here is aged 8 years?
I think it is. Ooh, that's a great question. Rum is an interesting one.
We don't need an answer, but there's something 8 about this.
There is something 8 about this.
This is the
I want to
magic
give
8
them
ball.
more. I want to give them more credit. I believe this is actually 8-year-old rum at its youngest, but
Sure.
That's one where we're going to get down into age ranges and then into a definitive age statement.
Ultimately, I just want to, like, just as a quick, I know we haven't even tasted this yet, and I'm doing a sidebar, but like, for people wondering, like, the motives behind me asking these questions, it's not necessarily to pass judgment of like, it's only good if it's 8 years minimum. No, that's not the case. It's just, when you're evaluating things, you want to know about the process so that you can start making informed inferences about why it tastes the way it tastes. So like don't read into me asking these questions. I'm only asking them in case an answer to it is apparent, and that answer can lead me to an explanation for something that can lead me to appreciate it more. So for what it's worth.
All right, boys, give me some no's and some tasting notes. I want to move through this one, not because I don't think it deserves the time, but because we got 4 rums.
Oh, and this is also a bit of a, this is like our, getting.
This is we would call this a calibrator.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, so I get, I like you can tell almost right away, at least from my nose, that it's molasses based. Like you get that deep, dark. It's not a demerara, right? Like a demerara has almost like a more confectionery thing. This has almost like a more oily, like approaching the nail polish on the nose.
Yeah, molasses is a byproduct of sugar manufacturing. They were looking for something to do with all that molasses.
Smells burnt. Smells not burnt in like a charred way, but burnt in like a well cooked way.
Rusty, what are you getting?
I'll be honest, like the nose is pretty light. I'm not getting too much on the nose, but when I taste it, I get that. I'm assuming from the barrels that vanilla. It's very vanilla-y to the point where I would almost say there's vanilla beans in it. It's
American oak. That's unsurprising. What's the proof on that one, Kaz? I forget.
It is 42%.
That sounds about right.
Sorry, 43%.
Yeah, these come in just above standard liquor.
I like me a 43%. It's a good percent. Keeps people on their toes.
86 proof, pretty standard in bourbons as well. Well, so one other thing I just want to throw in here, again, Joy Spence making this a very consistent line. I'm calling this one out here, and I do get it, is that all the Appleton rums come with a very distinctive orange peel top note that she is proud of getting the consistency in there year after year after year. She's a businesswoman.
I'll give it a candied orange peel for sure. Yeah. Like this is not like somebody just expressed a fresh orange peel, but it does have like almost like a Grand Marnier note to it, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah,
right?
I can definitely taste that.
This would, not to punt, but when we think about what would you actually put this in, this is a cocktailers rum in my mind, and this is an old fashioned.
I mean, yeah, it's
so
just
easy as an old fashioned.
And at the American oak, like the other thing that you get on the finish, you get a decent amount of char on the finish, which is not something that I always pull out of American oak. But it does, like when I say char, what I mean is like, yeah, you're tasting a little bit of like the literal toasting, flaming of the barrel, but you're also getting some phenolic structure to that. It like dries out the back of your palate a little bit, and so I'm getting some of that char.
Rusty, you taste any apples by any chance?
It's from Appleton after all.
I was about to ask that because like the moment I read the name, and probably because I'm staring at it, you guys aren't actually looking at the labels as much as I am. I just instantly assume when someone puts Appleton on the label that I'm going to taste something with apples. Like it's a bias that came into my palate before I ever had a sip. I was like, oh, this is going to taste kind of like fruity.
Yeah,
it's actually more vanilla-y and has that orange
like baked apple maybe.
Yeah, what I'll give it is, this is actually my main criticism of Buffalo Trace bourbon, is that for me, for whatever reason...
Does it taste like buffalo?
Well, yes. I actually have some buffalo chili going in the other room and some trout smoking in the courtyard, but it's when I taste Buffalo Trace bourbon, it tastes like appley to me, and it's distracting. I don't know. It might be a flaw in my personal palate, but it's just like distracting. But yeah, I get a little bit like baked or dried apple.
Well, at the end, that drying quality that you were saying, I get green apple. That's why I put it in my notes.
Oh, interesting.
I kind of forget about green apples, to be honest.
I don't know if I get that, but I can see there's like a little bit of bitterness going on that I could see kind of like going into like a Granny Smith peel type situation. So yeah, I mean. Imagine walking into a liquor store, picking this up for $22 to $25.
Oh, this one's more in like the 25 to 30 range.
Oh, the Appleton 8?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so their base expression is going to be a little bit more affordable, but the 8 years is going to be, so let's say under $30. This is a perfectly beautiful little rum. I think it begins to get us into what Jamaican rum is and can be, but I think our next one is going to kind of blow the top off that. Any final notes before we switch to the Smith and Cross?
I'm going to be honest, like you could be really lazy and just serve this straight up neat as an old fashioned with an ice cube and not do anything to it.
Yeah.
It does have a good amount of residual sweetness, and actually I think the residual sweetness, Ethan, see if you can give me a spoiler here. Did any of these add sugar?
No, they can't by law or by rule. It's not quite law, but in Jamaica, they agree not to fuck with it the way that you'll see others doing.
So knowing that for the rest of this tasting, there's no what we would call dosage here, no sort of external sweeteners added. I think that the sweetness level is something that we should take a moment to talk about. So that's a good call, Rusty, on the sweetness.
Yeah, definitely. This is an oaky rum. That is one of the things that we've gone back and forth about this. One of the interesting things is the bourbonization of rum, that the idea is that you need to age the crap out of it, make it taste more like bourbon so that you can steal those consumers, which I get. If I was trying to run a rum distillery, I'd be after those people too.
It's not wrong.
They'll spend a lot of money. But it's a pleasant oaky rum. I like it. It was a good baseline to start us. Now let's get into what I would call the most, it is just a Jamaican rum. This is what British people thought of as Jamaican rums, which is why this is actually a British rum with imported base spirit from Jamaica.
Yep. So they distill it in Jamaica, a couple different spirits. They bring them to England. They blend them. Then they age them in England.
That one,
So you got to tell me where these things are aged.
I should have actually taken a look at that. What we're dealing with here is this is based out of a tradition of getting a bunch of stuff off the docks which the British have been doing since time immemorial, blending and putting it back on the boats to send out with the sailors in the Navy. It's a really minimalist, beautiful label. I love it, and then it has these words that just sound kind of made up and cutesy. Plumber and Wedderburn. But it actually has a meaning. So these are two different ester level rums. So esters being the chemical byproducts of that fermentation, the yeast and the bacteria that give you those interesting flavors and smells that make it different from a vodka.
Now, are Plumber and was it Wedderburn? Are those like Fahrenheit and Celsius in terms of scales? Are those two different rum?
There is a scale that, and I do not remember the exact numbers. So there are smarter people than myself. I will create a chart and put it together for when we get into deep dive number 2, 3, 5, 20, which I envision one day. Plumber is a level of ester. Wedderburn is another level of ester content. So what you're getting, what this is it's a blend of Hampton Estate rums. Hampton originally was really just there to be blended. They now make single rums. They're delightful. A single rum, for the record, is a single expression off of the pot. There's no blending involved. And then it may get aged, but again, all one start to finish to the bottle. It's a Hampton Estate, and they're known for super high ester rums that you can dope in there to get the funk content up. It's all ester means funk. We'll just put that in there.
In common parlance, yep.
And you've got a 6-month Wedderburn style high ester, and then 18 to 36 month medium bodied Plumber, which is a little bit lower in the esters, and it's in ex-bourbon casks. So you get some of those. So we're still in the world of Appleton, but we're starting to move on to the edge cases.
Yeah, well, and there's another reason why we are no longer in the world of Appleton, at least for this bottle, and that's because it's 57% alcohol by volume.
Yes, this is a Navy rum through and through.
And it's a little bit lighter in color, and I mean, you got to be careful. So, notice that we didn't actually put any water into the first one. None of us did, because it was just such a pleasant sipping experience. With the Smith & Cross, you can certainly, you can sip it straight, yeah. But we're gonna have to put some water in here and see what happens.
One other background note before we start: this is the only one of these three that uses molasses, cane juice, and cane syrup. So rums, the only through line there is sugar, but really it's the French and the Haitians who do the cane juice, cane syrup rums. This one uses all three, so they're not like kind of. They're not attaching themselves to tradition necessarily. They're just trying to make the clean expression of Jamaican rum, which is not a clean expression.
Right.
It's a funky expression.
And down the road, what we're going to have to do, even just based on the stuff you're talking about, you've got molasses, cane juice, cane syrup, you've got 2 different type of ester contents. You've got one in American oak, the other one's aged, but you didn't say in what kind of barrel. So we've got already a 3 by several factor matrix that we should probably figure out to see what's in this rum, because I'm having a hard time getting it straight in my head, which isn't a problem. It's a beautiful product. It's a known. We love Smith & Cross, but it would be awesome to start being able to like actually pick out the individual decisions each step along the way. So if we can put together some sort of graphic like that for you, you can assume that it will get posted to the show notes page for this episode over at modernbarcart.com/podcast.
So let's dive in and taste on this one.
Yeah, what are you getting on the nose, Ethan?
I hate to keep going back to the molasses. It's like, I'm from Pennsylvania Dutch country. This is shoe fly pie to me.
Ooh.
Heavy, dark, burnt, in a good way, black molasses.
I like me a good chuffley pie. That's how they spell it, right?
No, Shoo.
Oh, really?
It's like shoe fly.
I feel like there was another one that spelled another
Shoe
way.
fly pie, treacle, all the molasses based.
Ooh, treacle. That's a good one.
Well, it's British.
British.
What
This
does
is a
treacle mean?
It's a what's that? It's a toffee molasses kind of situation, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like, as far as I understand, I've never actually tasted it, so I tend not to throw it around as a tasting note. But it's almost like molasses rock candy type situation.
That's how I understood it to be. Yeah, and then on the tasting, I told you this beforehand. I've started to create a shorthand for Smith & Cross, which is that this is just high proof, low sugar banana liqueur. It is super banana-y, like brown bananas.
Yeah, it's like getting ready to make banana bread. And there are some, like, as soon as you say that, you're like, oh, there's some kind of baked bready notes in the background, at least on the nose.
I would just like to point out in the order of this, I didn't do it on purpose, but we like to drink apple-y rums and banana-y rums.
No, great.
So Rafi is going to make his way into the stream. Yeah, the other thing that really sticks out on this one for me is that it has a numbing quality that goes beyond its alcohol content. I'm going to pipette it just to prove my point.
It's time for that.
Half my tongue is numb.
The back half, right?
No, front half.
Really?
Russell, there's a button on the soundboard for that.
That's what she said.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rusty.
Yeah, I would say when I sniff it, I taste a lot of, or smell a lot of black pepper.
Yeah.
Do you guys get that?
I get it on the taste.
Like, what is it, Malabar, black pepper?
The Malabar, yeah.
Yeah, like...
I actually get more of it on the nose when the water is in there, because we just put maybe, an ml and a half of water for each of us.
I gave you about 0.75 mLs of water in there.
Yeah.
Not a ton, just brought it down a little bit. To get into the banana thing, this is... I'm going to do shout-outs. It doesn't really necessarily help if you guys can't open, but the banana thing really kicked off in my mind about 10 or 15 bottles of this ago. When I was living in Massachusetts, there's a combined sort of 2 bars, 2 restaurants in one, Alden and Harlow and Longfellow in Cambridge. You guys rock. They did a rotten banana-infused rum old-fashioned that was off the charts. Now that I'm tasting this again more thoughtfully, again 15 bottles later, I'm wondering if they actually did the thing with the banana or if they just told us they did.
They probably did it.
Oh, they definitely did. But yeah, you guys rock. Hope you're doing okay.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm noticing with the addition of the water too is that I get like almost like a fatty, like a salted butter quality to it on the back of the tongue. Like it gives me
kind of toffee-ish?
Like for me, it's like very much salted butter,
like Southern butter cake.
Like take your banana bread and put some Kerrygold on it,
and then maybe griddle that a little bit in the pan.
Sure.
Ooh, shit. All right, I'm getting hungry.
Yeah, like literally Kerrygold. So yeah, that's why I love adding water, especially to these higher proof spirits, because it really brings out some interesting notes. And I, this is me coming from my spirits judging lens, and it really pays to take a little bit of time with your spirits, because to me, like, how many times have I had Smith & Cross? Like dozens and dozens of times. And yet I've never actually just sat here, put a little bit of water in it and seen what happens. And like all of a sudden, like to me, salted butter, like it's nice and savory. Suddenly that blends in with the sweetness of the banana. And I'm like, whoa, suddenly this is way more interesting. And because it's just straight filtered water and not, it doesn't come with the temperature change of the ice cube, I can sense it better. Because usually, like, I drink this on a rock occasionally.
Yeah.
But without that rock, like, I just get this beautiful flavor that I don't think I ever would have ever, like, just pulled out.
I'm going to ask a really almost philosophical question, because this came to mind. It was something I was thinking about the other day when I was actually drinking a gift Ethan gave me, which is, Do you guys think that the way the energy you bring, the itinerary you bring to drinking affects your taste? Like when you're going, like what you just said, Cause, like I never really sat there and just like poured a little glass and put a little drop of water in there and just enjoyed like the taste of Smith and Cross, even though you've been around it for years. I agree. Like, I think a lot of times, like, my taste is affected by my agenda.
100%.
Yes.
I think what we're trying to do here is create a new agenda for our tasting by doing these episodes. Like, we're like, let's just sit back, pour an ounce or so into a glass, and really try it without having, like, hey, here's the stress of my day rolling onto me, and I'm pouring my drink to try to put away 8 hours of a crazy freaking workday negotiating a deal.
Sure. Yeah, and I think what I was going to say with the Smith & Cross, this is the last one I'm going to put a cocktail on because the last two are a different breed altogether, this is the backbone of every Jungle Bird I make properly. This is where you really want to add a little bit of flair for your guests. It is a bold rum. It is trying to get in your face. It is kicking down the, like, I'm just going to say, like, this is to kind of invoke someone that Russell and I follow closely and Kaz kind of regrettably has to deal with. They are the barbarians at the gates of Flavortown, battering at the walls, trying to get in. It is just trying to take over, and that's a good thing. And for, I've seen it as low as $26, as high as $35. Anywhere in that range, I consider it especially at 57% alcohol, like, it goes a real long way.
Yeah, well, and if you think about the fact that the distillers have to pay taxes on that extra alcohol and are still able to give it to us at a price point that's pretty agreeable, then that's I would say as much, if not more, of a victory as the Appleton 8. So just one quick thing before we move on to sort of like the two big boys in this tasting. I really like Rusty's philosophical question because I think about it a lot. My personal philosophy with tasting is one that just like I'm just willing to revise my opinions given any new piece of information. And for me, like that little buttery note that I got on that Smith & Cross was like, oh, that's like a wonderful new piece of information. And it's like, maybe this is something I need to think about a little bit. And I think that's a lot of work. I think that I have a privilege that a lot of people don't, in that I get to do this work day in and day out and sit here and think about this stuff day in and day out. And whereas most people are, when they try to drink something, they're just trying to enjoy it. And so earlier we were talking about like the bourbonification of rum and like how different people basically just try to force rum onto bourbon drinkers because aged rum and bourbon drinkers seem to be a good match. And like, I can't really get on with that personally because it's like there's so many agendas in there, like as Rusty was just saying, like the agendas that we bring to things tend to color our tastings of them. So that's why, like, granted, like, yes, do we have all these bottles in front of us? Yes, do we have a bunch of information? Great. But the way we're trying to do this is we're trying to give this information to you in a way that's useful and doesn't necessarily cloud your judgment. Like, we're not saying necessarily any of these bottles right now are better than the others. I mean, these two special ones here at the end are just going to be special each in their own way. But like, yeah, I think a lot about agendas and tasting, and it's something that I think that if you're trying to get more serious about tasting, it's worth your time to think about. Like, if you're not trying to get serious about tasting, don't worry about it. Just have fun. But like, if you are, I really think it pays to like think about the agendas that you bring in, and to try and at least try and make it as pure as possible when you're doing it, because then you do get those lovely surprises like the one that I just got. Yeah. I wasn't planning for that.
Yeah. Note on that, just philosophically, again, this goes back to what the psychedelics researchers would term set and setting.
Right.
And I do think you can take that into all intoxicants and states of mind. You're altering your consciousness.
Yep. It
is dependent on set and setting because, I don't love the blanket billing of alcohol is a depressant, but yeah, so therefore you should avoid it while depressed. It's a much more loaded set of topics that we should get into with a psychiatrist. It's a matter of where are you coming into this? Why are you drinking this?
Yeah, what's your baggage? And are you willing to get rid of a little bit of that baggage, at least for a moment, in hopes that maybe you'll get a surprise? I like the surprises.
Yeah.
So speaking of surprises,
All right.
how about you freaking surprise me? Because we haven't tasted this one. Now tell us why we're tasting an aged before an unaged here in this sort of comparison tasting that you're giving us, Ethan.
All right, I'm going to give you a dual history, how I got these and why these rums matter. All right, firstly, these are both more or less identical bottles.
Yep.
It is I'm not going to try to do the accent, Habitation Velier. It's an Italian blender and distributor of rums.
With a
And-
French name.
Yeah, I know, weird. They're really big on getting interesting rums, putting them together in identical bottles, and charging a fat price for them. So I bought the cheaper unaged one over here first during, again, the rum pandemic obsession, and then eventually, I'm really glad I had this poor judgment sprung for something that was way outside. That was a bit of a reach for me. I'm a little embarrassed about it, but very happy I have it. Now, a history of Worthy Park Distillery.
Yeah, so take us through some of the names, because we got Forsyth's WP, right? So
yeah, so
WP is Worthy Park.
Yeah, so these come out of the Worthy Park Distillery in Jamaica. So bit of history on this one. They have been an active sugar plantation since 1670. So we're talking old. One of the more interesting things that they got over time was they became the most efficient sugar producer in Jamaica around the 1960s. So we're talking about like a sugar factory, more or less. Again, Jamaica being a sugar factory for the British. There's a lot of steampunk stuff going on there. I'm also going to do like a steampunk and distilling at some point, because I do think that's the difference for Jamaican rums, is the amount of copper and analog technology they use. But there was a situation, and I don't think he's watching. I wish he was, but he would also probably shake his head because I'm getting it a little bit wrong. Matt Petrick told me that after World War II, Jamaica as an island had a glut of rum production, in part because they just couldn't get it past the U-boats for all that time, and so overproduction put them in an economic position where...
Can you imagine a bunch of stone Jamaican guys trying to figure out a way to get their rum off the island, and there's just U-boats?
Well, the other thing is there's going to be a really stern, very sunburned British guy just shaking his head every time one of his schemes isn't executed.
That's fair.
You got to remember what the colonial possessions looked like pre-1945 and post. But the Jamaican rum producers had, their luck. This is both like a good and a bad thing. Again, a thing we're going to have to get into. It's like politics, economics, all woven into here. But there's something called the Spirits Pool Association of Jamaica. So they kind of all it's like OPEC. They put all their eggs in one basket. They put a bunch of rum together to get, in part, market power, but also be able to offer the widest breadth of products to blenders. So it was very hard prior to a couple of years ago to get single Jamaican rums. You would get a Smith & Cross. You would get the Funk. You would get something that some blender got a bunch of different rums and got tooled in their flavor that they wanted. And then they bottled it and charged a premium. So the Spirits Pool Association of Jamaica convened everyone in what was probably the most fun but serious summit of rum ever. And Worthy Park agreed to stop distilling for a period of time because they were making so much that it was driving down the price. That was back, just after World War II. So there was a good 5, almost 6 decades where they weren't operating. And then in 2004, Worthy Park lifted that cap. They kicked the distillery back into gear, and they started making rum again. And
04, so they went from like the 60s to 04?
Even longer. It's like the 60s was when their sugar production. So this is the other thing to note is most of these are working sugar producing farms that also have distillation on site.
So they're literally like soil to...
Oh, yeah. There's a pipe running from the sugar processing plant at Worthy Park to their distillery.
And that's what brings the internet to their distillery.
Yes. It's molasses internet, so it's kind of slow as molasses. There we go. So this first one, this first guy...
That was more of a rim shot situation, Rusty.
That's okay.
Thank you.
So this first guy is a 2005. So again, they restarted, and in 2007 they actually started bringing in more modern equipment. But what you see on the front of the bottle that Russell showed you is a representation of the Forsyth's pot still with a double retort coming out of Scotland.
Ooh, a double retort? Is that so double and so that's double, so that's 4 torts?
4 torts.
Wow.
Lawyers are having a field day.
As are bakers.
Yes. So this is at barrel proof. Almost spilled a beer. I'm just going to put this right here. So yeah, what we're talking about right now is a 2005 rum that was aged on site for 10 years. So this second one is coming off of their new equipment and actually is unaged. So we're seeing the original, the OG equipment.
And that's what's so special about this bottle, right? Like
There's so many things special about this bottle. This is the first rum that they made after they closed down.
When you say original equipment, you mean real original?
Oh,
or just
no,
original,
not
like
16,
style?
no, not
Okay.
like 1670s. Like
I just want to clarify for
Well,
everybody.
where did the equipment go? Like, tell me about this equipment. Where did it go after?
I have no idea. It sounds
They
like they
just
mothballed
decommissioned it?
Yeah, it sounds like it, like a battleship.
Interesting. Well,
All right, so this is barrel proof.
yeah, it's
so
57.8% ABV.
Yep. And because this is a European rum,
115.6%.
since this is a European rum, it actually has
115.6%.
serving sizes and nutrition facts. So
Let's not read those.
159.7 calories per serving. They also attempt to measure their ester levels. This is like a prescription bottle's level of information on the outside of a rum bottle.
Yeah, don't get me into. Maybe if we have a little bit of time, we can get into measuring ester levels, but don't get me into it right now because let's talk about the. Wow.
So
Let's talk about the naris on this bad boy.
This is a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, just wait, Russell.
It's lovely. I mean, one of the things that I get on this really cool that I don't necessarily expect from a rum is sort of like a dusty, perfumey quality, almost like a frankincense.
I get dusty,
Perfumey, but it's got like a sweetness, like a camphory sweetness on the nose.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of like fancy writing leather. Like,
Oh yeah, I'm getting
like
a
the
lot
good,
of leather.
the good element of leather, like that, like refreshingness, that like deep, rich.
Not like that old baseball glove that's been in the closet for like a decade.
This has smoke on the nose. The alcohol burn is there. It is a
I get like a heather smoke, or like when Scotch people talk about their different peat sourcing, and they talk about like the floral peats versus the briny peats and stuff. Like this is like a
briny
a
Pete.
heathery.
Is that your father-in-law?
Briny Pete is in fact my father-in-law. Shout out to Pete Murphy, who is currently on a Bloody Mary kick as well as a chartreuse kick. So
That's a complicated co-kicking.
yeah, it's he's a man of he's a man of many talents.
All right. So have you guys tasted this yet? Because
No, I can't get. There's something on the nose. It's like
is it milk chocolate?
streusel. I get like a. I remember when I was in high school, you could get like a couple of cookies, or like they came in like a little wax paper. All right.
I know what
Anyway,
you're talking about. The crumbly,
like crumbly
brown sugar
streusel.
topping.
Yeah, Thanks, Rusty. Anyway, it smells just like cinnamon streusel, but like bad cinnamon streusel or undercooked cinnamon streusel cookies, because this is like sending me back to my high school cafeteria.
There's something that smells like unfinished.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the yeast, right? Because like I don't know, like maybe there's some
Yeast and
like,
bacteria,
There's
man.
some
Probably
like
the
there's
raw
some like
dough.
lees in. I mean, not lees in the wine sense, but like anyway. All right, I'll do a palate and stop deliberating on the nose.
It's hot. It's very spicy.
And that sends me into Scotch territory. This sends me into like a Speyside brandy, like a Madeira brandy finished Scotch situation.
I definitely see the Madeira, like
Yeah.
aged barrels.
Well, it has an oxidative factor, right? So like the Madeira is notorious for, the way they make it is in most or many cases, they'll actually they'll leave it out in the sun, they'll apply heat to it. And so that's where you get the oxidative factor. And I'm getting like like if this were a Scotch right now, I'd be like, this is definitely like a Madeira or like a oxidized wine finished. But this isn't, right? So we're getting these notes specifically from the rum and the barrels.
Yep. And
do we know anything about the barrels?
I couldn't get a bead on the barrels. It is, I think the barrels are kind of secondary here. This is Caribbean aging. This is Caribbean
Hot.
aging. This is long fermentation.
Well, and think about long fermentation.
This is a Scottish still. No wonder it tastes like Scotch.
Well, it's a Scottish still, but Caribbean fermentation or Caribbean aging. What is the one characteristic of Caribbean aging?
Hurricanes.
Heat, oxidation, right? They're aging.
Hurricanes.
Hurricanes.
It is. I mean, the other thing that I'm really getting in here, and it's not that sweet.
No, it's very dry, which is again why it drives me toward like a single malt.
Right, because I was talking about the bourbonization of rum. Not only is there no sugar being added, minimal sugar is coming off these barrels into the rum, which is different from that Appleton.
Very different, yeah.
I have a question about barrels.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a tangent. How did like barrels? I guess American bourbon barrels weren't available to them in 1790.
Right.
Correct.
Heck, I doubt they were available to them in 1850 because of all the
Bourbon wasn't really even bourbon at that point.
Well, and they aren't going to go to get French oak casks because they weren't dealing with France for a while.
Yeah. Well, they were dealing with them with their cannons.
Yeah, there was a slight Napoleonic effort.
Yeah.
That kind of like
Napoleonic effort. That's how I'm going to teach it if I ever have to homeschool my kids.
I guess rum was evolving, let's say, from the 1600s onward. And at some point, we all start putting them in standardized barrels. And nowadays, we're like, oh yeah, someone throws something in a bourbon barrel, we just take that for granted, and that should be how it tastes. But like, you go back a couple hundred years, you got something aged for 8 years. Was it because they left it on the boat by accident for 8 years? Or was it because they actually let it, like, set it down for 8 years?
Right.
And intended it to be left for 8 years? Like, at what point did we're like, oh, this is how we should age rum. This is the type of barrel we should use to age it.
Industrial booze factories and is how I would term the way that Europe looked at these rum distilleries for a while.
Yeah, and booze as a commodity, not booze as an art piece, right? We're right now what we're drinking is booze as a piece of art.
Yeah, and what Russell's getting at is an interesting piece because it still does live on the cooperage traditions down there.
Oh my
God. Honey, if you're watching, my fiance and I would I know she's not. I'm looking. We finally have agreed because I'm not a beach person. She is, but I will be intending to either take some trips to Martinique, Demerara, Jamaica,
Demawawa. I don't know if there's a beach there.
I know there's not, but it's hot.
Yeah.
And I really want to see this for myself, but because it's not until recently, until I'll just call it the industrialization, the recolonialization of this industry, you would have these barrels, kind of like the one that's out on your out in your courtyard. You have these barrels that are kind of serviceable. You got a guy who's knowledgeable about how to get them back into service, hammering a different stave in there to patch it up, to get it to a point where it can age the rum. It was not scientific or consistent until someone signaled that there was value in that. And now you've got ex-bourbon casks where they're like, well, these ex-bourbon casks came from this year from the Elvin Williams distillery. And you got a bunch of actually guys down there trying to help them out, and God help them.
Yeah. Well, and one other thing that I do want to point out, Rusty, you were sort of contrasting the bourbon tradition with the rum tradition in as far as we're tasting a bunch of bourbon barrel stuff, but there were no bourbon barrels for a large portion of this tradition. Well, there are people who speculate that the actual charring of barrels that were used to house spirits was actually undertaken in order to eliminate some of the flavor of the stuff that those barrels held previously.
Like smoked fish.
It's like nasty stuff. And they're like,
possibly Admiral Nelson's body.
Yeah, that I don't know. I'd take a pull of that. And so it's one of those things where it's like, actually, that to me is something that actually those two traditions share. It's like, well, why are we charring this barrel? Because there was some nasty stuff in there. They were probably doing other stuff that was similar in the Caribbean back then. And again, like, you also have to, like, that question to me brings us back to one of the really important points about rum, which is rum as a commodity versus rum as a piece of art, right? So, like, we're tasting a piece of art and a piece of history right now for the large portion of its career, so to speak, and still to this day, for the most part, rum is just a commodity. It's a way to save sugar and, you know, export calories and keep surly sailors happy at certain points in history. So if you look at it from a commodity perspective, barrels don't freaking matter. But if you look at it as an art piece, that's when it starts to matter. So the interesting zone is the gray zone in between those two perspectives, at least for me.
Yeah. So I want to get some final thoughts on this. We're going to just return to this after the show because
My God,
there's so much
this is
left
like
in.
scotch, dude.
I'm not going to finish this right now because...
I am.
All right, Russell. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Hype up me a little bit.
Boop, boop, boop.
So good with some water in it.
All right, one last look with the water opening it up, and then let's...
I gave you 5 drops. I want you to start using drops.
Will you guys cheers?
Should we cheers?
On my mic, then yours.
Oh, that's amazing.
2 cheers. Lots of eye contact. What's up, IG Live? We're actually sort of, I got a slightly different IG Live setup. So we have both of our faces currently on IG Live, which is really nice to me. I see some folks over there commenting, which is great. They are on my phone.
All right.
So, opened up. What is this? Quickly, so we can get onto this. Well, actually, I think we might be finishing with my favorite expression. So
It is. Yeah, the next one is just phenomenal. Again, I'm coming back to milk chocolate.
Milk chocolate. Okay, I like that. I was gonna say this is a little stanky now.
Yeah. It's
get a bit of
it's
stank.
fustier now.
Yeah, fusty. That's a good one.
It's basement. It is old barn.
Warehouse. Yeah, old warehouse. Yeah, you get some like dustiness in there.
Old Warehouse is a cheap discount bourbon that I'm afraid some of my forklift operators at my day job might be dipping into during their shifts.
You know what? The palate doesn't change all that much for me though with just those 5 drops of water. It gets a little softer because the ABV is down a little bit, but. To me, it's just Speyside Scotch.
I can fuck with it at 57. The only thing I would caution against saying Speyside Scotch is whose flavors are we talking about?
I don't know. It's not a category I'm well acquainted in.
Like, what if you took the guy from Worthy Park, put him in an isolation tank, and then sent him over to Scotland? Would he be saying aged rum when he tastes all these scotch?
Probably not. But and yet I was saying rum on these two.
Yeah.
And they were also from the island where he operates. So, for what it's worth.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of had a way more of a solid saltiness to it.
Yeah.
Like right in the middle of my tongue, right where the salt hits, like, you know, the grain salt, not like your standard table salt.
No, it's like a brine.
Exactly. Like you could feel it, taste it, texture. And that's where I thought about Hurricanes.
I mean, it's a cool spirit.
This one is going to take a while for me to get through. It's
what do you
So
mix
for
that
anybody
in?
who wants to know where Ethan lives, just email podcast@modernbarcart.com and we'll negotiate.
yeah. We'll just say that this is the highest dollar value bottle on my bar currently.
Currently, it's on my bar.
Ah, fuck. All right.
Moving
on.
Wrapping up our tasting here,
This is the WP 502. So the difference here is again.
So same producer.
But going back through history, now we are 15 years later. So these are the double retort pot stills brought in by Forsyths and installed at Worthy Park in 2005.
But it's this picture on the front is the same picture.
Same still.
Same still.
Same still.
Okay.
Same still. Longer fermentation.
Ooh. No barrels.
3 months of fermenting, which if anyone
3 months.
If anyone wants to know how long fermentation takes, not that long.
3 whole months.
Yeah, so your average rum producer is fermenting for a couple of days maybe, because those yeasts, you can dope in, and we didn't really talk about this much, but you can dope in distiller's yeast, You can add in different cultures. You can do all wild.
They can add more sugar so they have more to eat.
Yeah, so they do a bit of a combination, but the Worthy Park and the Hampton fermentation tanks, they're made of metal. They look like wood on the outside. They are so corroded and weird and funky.
So rusted over?
Rusted over, molded over.
Are you going to take scrapings while you're there?
Yeah, I'm going to steal some scrapings.
They better frisk you.
Yeah. Oh, I hope they do. So what we're dealing with here is a Rusty. Do you also want to text people that were on the last bottle?
I'm doing that right now.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Thanks, buddy.
So yeah, these stills had been on and cranking for about 10 years when they went about doing this one. Or is it 5? No, it's 10. So what this is a...
So we're going from a 2005 to 2015. Correct.
And this is 100%, again, single rum, same pot still that did.
What's our proof?
We're talking 57%.
So very similar.
This is a, I'm not even going to talk about these like ester contents because you don't believe in it. But this was a molasses only rum. And it is, and to be fair, Worthy Park has been making unaged rums. They make Rum Bar, for example. I tried to get a bottle of that to bring in instead as a straw man. It's out of stock. It is a very popular, like you make a tea punch with it. Right. Just lime, sugar mixed to your liking.
Are we liming?
You just
we
said
could lime.
Make a tea punch like everyone does that on like a Saturday.
I mean, if they did,
Russell, I think you might. Russell might be thinking of TEA.
TI.
Yeah, tea punch is basically a jankier daiquiri.
It's a hand mixed daiquiri at the table
with maybe some ice.
If you guys don't know about this, our man Kaz here makes an amazing old school colonial era tea punch.
Yes, with using tea as like one of the larger ingredients. That's why.
But he also drinks pitchers of tea punch and things don't go so well.
Yeah, well.
So this one, crystal clear, unaged. Sorry. So the whole point is
Is it filtered?
No.
What? How is it crystal clear then?
Because it came off a still.
No kidding.
So this is
you learn something every day.
This is from 5 years ago. The reason why the 5 years ago is significant is because it has been incredibly hard in the U.S. to get the same quality and diversity of rum that they've been getting in these colonizer countries. So this
colonized
literally like
colonizer. Yeah.
So Velier,
the UK,
again, brought
the EU,
shipped this back from Europe, and this is my second bottle. So this is the first of the absurd weirdo rums that I've bought a second time because shout out Ace Beverage in Northwest DC.
Ace Bev, sponsor us, baby.
Please. No, we'll just I'll just come and buy your liquor. So one thing I want to get out of this one last item is when you nose it, this is the nail polish I was talking about before.
It's so good.
I just lost like 3 nasal hairs.
It is so hot. But I also get apricot. I get rotten banana. Again, really great flavors. Rotten nail polish.
Yeah. No, this is fun actually because we are about to on the main podcast, we are about to launch an episode of Breaking Bloody, hopefully by the end of this month, that explores a topic called benign masochism. And the idea behind benign masochism is that it's like, eating super spicy peppers or stuff like that, like stuff that should objectively just be no bueno, no fun. All right, you're on a soundboard prohibition for the rest of the episode.
I actually felt bad. I had
We're gonna put you in timeout, Russell.
You guys explained it to me, and I'm like, this seems pointless.
Yeah.
All right,
so, but anyway, so like the question remains like, why do you enjoy nail polish? Why do you enjoy rotten bananas?
And it is because
with perhaps
why do you enjoy? All right,
the seasonally appropriate tag, a greasy black peel.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Very well done. Yeah, I can do a pretty good approximation of that song when I get my pipes a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
What I'm getting out of this one that's really interesting is the same things that you would get from a blue cheese.
On the nose or on the palate? What are we talking?
On the palate. It's got some salt. It's got some funk. It's like I'm eating a little bit of camembert.
Camembert? That's your blue cheese?
I mean, I don't think it's got Roquefort.
Yeah. You know, what I will say...
I think the Smith and Cross has Stilton or Roquefort.
You know, Stilton, not Roquefort. Stilton's is the richer, sweeter of the two.
And it's British.
Yeah. British. But no, I do get what you're saying in terms of like when you bite into one of those like one of the actual sort of like the spots on the blue cheese where you're like, that's where the end. That's where the
penicillin.
That's where the bad stuff lives, or that's where the little bugs live. You get a little bit of bitterness with that, and for me, I definitely get that bitterness. To me, this has a bit of an almondy finish to it. I love unaged spirits, and I actually love that we are finishing with an unaged spirit, because usually you go in the opposite direction. You go from the unaged to the aged.
I had a plan.
You're a man with a plan, and luckily I dissuaded you from bringing in a bottle that was from the Canal Panama today, but
that's my Van Halen rum series.
Yeah, we should do a whole I mean, listen, that's what this whole thing is for. Like, eventually, we can't do rum every month.
Rusty, do you want to do a Van Halen rum stream at some point? Panama.
All right, so just so everyone knows, I'm speaking to America. I had
America
two
in
favorite
general.
bands growing up. It was Van Halen and Metallica. And let's just say I literally would be doing the dishes, washing the entire kitchen down every day as I had to.
And my comments on Cinnamon Streusel cookies weren't relevant.
No, not like Van Halen.
Russell is culturally expressing his mullet.
Or his ability to grow one very fast.
Yeah, so getting back to this particular expression, this spirit, this is so much lighter than you would think. All right, so I actually think the Smith and Cross had more
It's harsher.
esters going on. This is harsher,
No,
but it's
Smith and Cross.
okay. So
Well,
this is same alcohol level.
harsh is a hard word to define, though, so we need to get more
All
specific.
right, so where I'm going with this is that you would think 3 months of fermentation, you're just going to get all the blue cheese, banana, apricot. What you're really getting is an expert really dialing in their product and giving you what you want and not anything else. This has not less complexity,
No,
less elements than the Smith and Cross.
fewer flavor notes competing for airtime.
Yeah, there you go. It's more signal, less noise.
That's a good way to put it, and you know, it brings up an interesting point about fermentation, because you know, fermentation is where all the flavor comes from. Distillation doesn't do a whole lot. Now, yes, the decision between a pot still versus a column still, like all these things, these are very important decisions, but really fermentation from a purist perspective is where the flavor comes from.
Oh, and at Worthy Park, those few remaining, like,
Warby Parker?
so think about like the fermentation pits there. That was Hunger Games going on, and they all beat the shit out of each other. And what was left from the dunder, the muck pits, and the wild yeasts and the bacteria that they dosed in there, they fought it out. And a few raised their hands at the end and said, "I got this."
Yep. Well, and again,
Butterscotch.
and again, referring back to my Brian Davis interview, like, he does probably the best job that I've ever heard describing how yeast have actually sort of domesticated humans in their attempt to win their war over bacteria. And like, these esters that we get here are, I believe they are secreted by the yeasts to signal to the bacteria to like basically fake out the bacteria, that they're like, oh no, like everything's chill now, like, you know, you guys are fine, you don't need to fight us anymore. And then the bacteria are like, oh no, we're good now, okay, great. And then the yeast are like, pa pa pa, you're done. So you're gonna have to go back to my interview with Brian Davis again to get the more accurate and scientifically relevant version of that argument.
We need to borrow the puppets from Good Eats so Kaz can act out the fight between yeast and
Yeah, this is starting to become a more Alton Brownian situation where we're starting to need an actual, like,
we could hire
test
an
kitchen.
animator. Oh, I was thinking animation and props. You were thinking test kitchen.
I'm thinking test kitchen and sock puppets.
Yeah, I mean, cool.
I have a whole extra downstairs like kitchen.
Oh, I will be building that into your new house.
Well, Rusty, if you're willing to let me soundproof it, then that's a separate
I mean,
conversation.
it's already it's about equal underground to your apartment.
Yeah. Do you see all the soundproofing tiles that we have in this underground room right now.
All right. Anyway, Russell, you've been notably silent on this spirit because we've been talking over you the whole fucking time. Please weigh in.
Yeah, what do you think?
It's got a certain sweetness to it, but not in like the banana molassesy like classic one that we were doing with earlier.
Like a saltwater taffy?
I mean, literally about to say taffy.
All
Thank
right,
you.
all
I
right,
just steal my
motherfucker.
own words
All
from
right.
me.
Yeah, let him talk.
Yeah, saltwater taffy, but it's very smooth. Like you can, this one
Doesn't get stuck in your teeth either.
exactly. It just goes down the palate real quick. If you wanted something you could basically drink swiftly, like a clear tequila, to be honest.
Like a 57% ABV tequila.
Russell, take a direct nosing of that again. It is not easy. It burns the hairs off the inside of your nose.
Are we watered?
I mean, we've been
I have not
drinking
watered.
tequila, or not tequila. Sorry, we've been drinking rum for about an hour now. So like my mouth is numb. So yeah, we can do anything down there.
All right.
That's what she said.
Thank
yeah,
you.
we're a little bit delayed on that's what she says, but you know.
Ooh, you get the olive straight up on the nose.
Oh, there's some serious olive.
10 drops of water in each of ours. A little bit of olive.
Now it's salty. It went from sweet to salty like a butterscotch.
Loving that. One thing that I cannot underemphasize to people, if you are doing
You
this
cannot
seriously,
overemphasize. If you can't underemphasize it,
I can't not underemphasize. There you go.
thank you.
We like a Monty
Turn-
Python sketch.
Turn that the correct way. What I want to emphasize is that, like, man, like, it's so easy for us to do this whole setup, get all the cameras set up, get this whole room cleared up, get the lighting, get the Instagram Live, get all this stuff set up, and then not get the pipettes in the water. But man, they make such a big difference, and I try to standardize. Like for the age, I added 5 drops for this one, which is at least to me a little bit hotter, a little bit less viscous. So I thought it could handle a little bit more water, even if that's not necessarily a logical assumption. I added 10, and man, just boom, olive out of nowhere. So this is the type of exploration that you can do with a single Glencairn glass full of a single spirit.
Hey, where would you buy a Glencairn glass anyway?
Well, you could go to modernbarcart.com, of course.
We have better prices than Williams Sonoma, as far as I remember.
I believe we do. And we don't screw anybody over. So hopefully as we roll this out, what we can do is we can actually like do some do a little kit for our live stream tasting where we bundle a journal and some Glencairn glasses. I'll work on that as we start rolling here again in 2021. But yeah, it makes such a big difference. And like talking about the value of like not bringing an agenda into it, like curiosity is an agenda.
Yeah.
And so if you come into this with curiosity and you're willing to like take some very basic measures to make sure that your tastings are consistent and that you're actually like doing stuff step by step by doing the visual, then the aroma, then the palate, you can really get a lot out of getting to know your spirits, and adding a few drops of water is great for that. So, hey, we might even start carrying like packs of these micro pipettes for that point. Like
I
they're
hear we have a
super cheap.
connection.
Yeah, I hear one of us as their day job works for a company that could. We'll talk offline.
Let's get some Modern Barker and Nalgene bottles as well.
Got it.
Yeah. So, but yeah. Anyway, yeah. So, add water, things change. That's the moral of the story today. We tasted through.
We named the episode that.
Yes, Rusty, we can. But what are the overall takeaways? We tasted through amazing spirits. I mean, it was a huge privilege, of course, to taste these 2 single Jamaicans. But Ethan, I mean, what are your takeaways having done these all side by side? Because I know we've never all done these side by side.
Apples, bananas. For the start, apples and bananas.
Apples and bananas.
So we started the Rafi rums, and then we moved into what happens when you kind of unleash I don't want to say unleash. It's always been a capitalist enterprise here. What they did was they allowed a lot of creativity to come back and reimagine how they were going to run these distilleries and what products were going to come back to our markets. In the U.S., we're still operating behind the curve. But these kind of expressions, also want to call out, again, acebevdc.com. Ace Beverage has some great Hampton single rums. These are really the forefront of single rums, letting you understand the taste of a specific distillery. the same way you would a scotch. So imagine if let's just take a step back. Imagine if the only scotch you had was first a bottle that just says scotch on the outside of it.
So
Then,
banknote.
Yeah, banknote scotch. Then we'll say Cuddy Sark.
Get Cuddy Sark, then
And then Johnny Walker as your upper end. And then you didn't have any of your Obans or your Bruichladdis or
Kalilas, yada
all
yada.
those things. What they're finally getting, and I hate to use the language of the, again, I'm trying to infuse a little bit of the, like, where we need to go culturally on this.
Yep.
Is I don't want to use Scotch as the analogy because that's usually using the language of the people who oppress them to define it. But you are finally getting to a point where Jamaican and other producers of rum are saying that they deserve equal billing and the right to make single rums and the kind of things that are way more interesting and way more nuanced. And this is the art. This is in between. This is like the pop art, and this is the commodity.
I love Smith & Cross's pop art.
Smith & Cross as pop art is my... I'm not going to drop this mic. You paid for it.
Yeah, it's all right. It's $30. It's sad that our $30 mics are better than our $120 mics, but they are. So,
Here we are.
Rusty, what are your takeaways, brother?
All right. So I listen to everything you're saying, but the Appleton estate, just the fact that it was almost a cocktail in a glass on its own.
It's a liqueur almost.
Yeah. I just enjoyed that. And maybe because we're doing them neat. I'm not imagining these in cocktails. I'm not imagining them mixed up in any special way. The Appleton, the way it came across, just an old-fashioned in a bottle. That was delicious and surprising to me.
I'll buy you a bottle.
Yeah.
All right.
Done.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think surprising is a nice way to put that. I don't know if I was necessarily prepared for that, having tasted their base expression, which is, I think, a little thinner, a little bit less rich.
A little funkier, though.
Yeah,
Because
I
there's
agree with
less
that.
age getting in the way of the funk.
Correct.
Same funk there, but age.
Yep, agreed. All right, so, I think this was a really well-considered tasting. I think we went from, like, one end of a spectrum to almost like an upside down end of that spectrum, in that it was unaged, and yet like there was a lot of cool things to do with it. So my only takeaway really is that I'm excited to do this sort of thing with other types of spirits. So, we kicked off the new year with this because obviously Ethan has been on a huge rum kick. We will probably return to rum at least one or two more times, if not more, this year. But what we're planning to do, just so that all you folks who are still listening can just make a plan, and that thing is we're going to be sort of categorizing every month. We're going to publish a category of like 3 to 4 spirits that we're going to taste in this. And this is not our bottle review episodes. We're still working on getting those kind of more off the ground, but these are just going to be our themed tasting episodes, and we're going to do our damnedest to publish these bottles that we're tasting ahead of time, so that if you want to take one of those bottles and join us, or all of them and join us one for one, you can do that. And the reason why that's the case is because I don't think that like teaching Zoom cocktail classes is a good use of my time right now, because eventually we're all going to get vaccinated and we're going to be back to our lives. But this sort of thing where we do a deep dive on 3 or 4 different bottles in a specific category, that's super nutritionally dense, and I want to keep on doing that. So
And it's timeless.
yeah, exactly. Like this information is not going to go away, when you decide to buy a book that teaches you the same thing without having to freaking watch me on a Zoom screen, right? So ultimately I love how this went. I love the personal little epiphanies that I had in each glass, and I'm super excited to keep on rolling out these theme tastings. So over January, February, you can bet that I'm going to be planning these out for like basically the rest of this half of the year. So, hey, if anybody wants to make recommendations, podcast@modernbarcart.com. I've gotten half a dozen emails in the last couple days from podcast listeners. So this is the time to make your voice heard. If you want to influence what we're going to be doing and you want to like be a more active part of the community, great. Do that. I'm literally the guy behind the email. So email us. You'll get a personal response from me. and we will make sure that your voice is heard during one of our future themed tastings. So
last note on that, if you want to submit a spirit, we have done these tastings for submitted spirits. And
yes,
we do have an ethical code here, which is we will not subject your spirit to the whatever this horse shit is. If we do not think it would be something that we would personally drink, we have respectfully turned away bottles.
That's right.
But if you tune in to the podcast and look at our last live stream,
one of the last,
yeah, before the gift guide, we do take these bottles, and that's not a play for free liquor. That is a if you want to be subject to this weird ass horseshit scrutiny, I'll take it.
Yep. Send your bottles in. Same email address, podcast@modernbarcart.com. We'll send you a survey so that you can give us all the information about the bottle. We'll send you how to get the bottle to us, and then we will get that bottle on this live stream. Last thing I want to say is that the next time we do a live stream, we are going to have a sponsor. And I'm very excited about this sponsor because it involves meat. It is Near Country Provisions. And so we're giving a little free shout out towards the end of this live stream. I don't know if Adam from Near Country is going to be watching or not, but yeah. So we're going to be featuring some of their products in our stream, and hopefully you folks will enjoy the discount codes that we give you for that. So
Russell, what's your parting thought?
Well, not to interrupt Cos, but first off, meat is delicious.
Agreed. No interruption.
Yeah, it can be.
My parting thought is, once again, rum is complicated.
Yes!
It is so complicated. Like, Scotch is simple. You got peaty and not meaty.
Oh, geez. Let's not get into it.
You got vodka, which is just how many times can you remove things.
Well, vodka's a good one for that.
Vodka is addition by subtraction, which we should get into when I'm sober.
Let's be honest, gin, not in a cocktail, kind of weird. But like rum, it's like, how much rum do you want to taste? And how much do you want to taste it? And which rum did you choose? Which island did you get it from? Rum is basically the freewheeling free spirit.
Rum, the archipelagized spirit.
Boom.
All right. Cheers, gents. Pick your glass. Let's do a little cheers. All right. Thanks for listening, folks. That's delicious. We'll catch you next time here on the Modern Bar Cart Podcast. Rusty, why don't you take us out on those keys, and we'll see you next time. Hey everybody, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, there's two big things you can do for us here at Modern Bar Cart. One would be to tell your friends and family if you think they'd enjoy listening to us talk about cocktails. And if they don't download podcasts, they can always stream our episodes on their desktop directly from the show notes page at modernbarcart.com. The other thing you can do to help would be to head on over to iTunes or wherever you download your podcasts and leave us a review. 5 stars are great, but we're more interested in your feedback. And the beauty is, the more reviews we have, the easier it will be for other folks out there to learn about our show. We're trying to start a cocktail revolution here, and by spreading the word, you're helping us fight the good fight. You can always reach us by emailing podcast@modernbarcart.com if you're looking for cocktail or bartending advice, or if you're a pro who would like to pull up a mic and be interviewed for all to hear. Also, definitely follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Modern Bar Cart for cocktail porn, recipes, and entertaining tips. And keep an eye out for new product releases and special offers, which are happening all the time. We love our listeners, and we really enjoy giving you exclusive discounts and sneak peeks at our latest and greatest cocktail projects. This episode may be over, but for you, the mixological fun and adventures are just beginning, so remember, folks, drink responsibly and experiment boldly. This episode was made possible with editing and sound design by Samantha Reed, rum insights and hard-to-find bottles courtesy of Ethan Hall, philosophical waxiness and soundboard operation by Russell Gehring, and a little bit of live streaming magic by yours truly. This has been a Modern Bar Cart production, copyright 2021.